Okay, well, here's our topic for the last part of the session, Stay with God. We'll dip into some parts of it. You know, it's a substantial book, 150 pages, but it has a lot more than you would think for 150 pages. So the poem, the book originated in Baba's order. Francis Brabazon and Don Stevens had been invited to attend the 1955 Sahavas at Meherabad. And that consisted of 4 weeks where each week 200 of his Indian Baba lovers had been invited to be at Meherabad to enjoy his intimate company. It was meant for his intimate companionship, not darshan, not a mass program, but the give and take between lover and beloved. That's what Baba wanted for that occasion. And so there are 4 different language groups who came. But Francis, Don, I think, was able to come for a week, but Francis was able to stay for the entire 4 weeks. And when the time was up for Don, and he and Francis were called in to, meet with Baba, and Baba asked them if they'd enjoyed the experience, and they had. And so Baba asked each of them to develop a book based on their experience at the Sahavas. And Don Stevens' book that resulted was Listen Humanity. You're acquainted with that, Listen Humanity. Baba gave Don a whole big sheaf of discourse material that he edited into the essays that you'll find there. And Don also wrote a narrative of the experience of the 55 Sahavas. And Baba told Francis to write a book on the theme, Stay with God. So Baba gave him that title, in fact. And Francis began intending to write something in prose, a prose account of the 55 Sahavas. But as he progressed, it developed into something much more than that. When Baba came in 56, Baba asked him if he had finished it, and he apologized, saying he hadn't. And Baba said, Francis said, I'll start the moment you've left Australia. And Baba said, yeah, that will be satisfactory. And over the next 2 years, he composed this, living in Sydney with Robert and Lorna Rouse there. And it's really... there's no other book like it in our Meher Baba library. I think it's the one, it's a work of art of real majesty and stature. I can't think of anything else that really compares with it, actually. And I would call it an epic. It's a modern epic. It's not like the Iliad or the Odyssey, or each of them is a single long narrative story. It's not that. But it has epic elements in it, nonetheless. Here's when Francis finished it, by the time of Baba's second visit. Baba went to Australia the first time in 1956, and the second time in 1958, in June. And they had just gotten ready in a primitive way the great center there, Avatar's Abode. Anyone here been to Avatar's Abode? Some of you have, a couple, yeah. It's one of the great Baba centers in the world, for sure. And so Baba was there they had their anniversary each year in like June 6th, 7th, 8th, something like that. If you go to Australia, that would be a time to consider for your visit. But during that, Baba seems to have indicated to Francis he would like to invite him for a longer stay to Australia. And that invitation came. So right at the end of the year, Francis finished Stay with God and posted a copy of it to Baba and brought a copy with him. And he arrived in early January. And over the next month, 2-3 months, Francis read it out to Baba daily, and Baba enormously liked it. Here are a couple of things that Baba said about it. This is the new edition, and one of the elements it has is an introduction. I better put on my other glasses. These are the wrong ones. Yeah, true. The third edition was sold out, and so they needed to do one anyway. So they asked me to edit it, and I didn't change the poem. Tiny little corrections, that's all. But I felt it needed a historical introduction, which this is. The writing of Stay With God, A Brief History, because a lot of the reason that people would read it was because of what Baba said about it. That had to be on the record. So that was one thing. But the other thing was, who here is part of the reading group? Aaron? Yeah, Vestas, Skylar, you three? You're not? I don't know, does your group allow other people into it? There's an age limit. You can just sort of call up afterwards and say, what did you talk about? Yeah. No, I do strongly encourage actually reading all of. Some people will sit in their home armchairs and read poetry, and if you're that type, well and good. But for a lot of people, it's kind of nice to read it with others, I do think. And it's very good to read aloud. And that very much goes for Stay With God. So even if you read it in your armchair, declaim it, recite it. No, it helps. It helps a lot. But one of the characteristics of some people find it to be difficult. Have you found it to be difficult?
Yes, I don't understand a lot, but we can grasp bits and pieces.
Have you guys found it hard at all? Okay, there we go. So if you're finding the discourses too difficult, toss it aside and, yeah. Some people do find it difficult, but yeah, I think if you read it with a group, that can really help because you can go back to a passage and unpack it. One of the most difficult things about it, especially Book 5, is he has references all over the place. And however well educated you are, you're not going to know all of his references because they're from all the world civilizations, East and West, going back to Emperor Yu. Do we have any experts here on Emperor Yu? Yeah, you probably haven't met him. He lived about 1800 BC in China. Great waterworks were developed by him. So from all the way from that up to contemporary artists in the 20th century, all over the place. But it's not just name dropping. I really do want to emphasize that because I've studied this closely now. When he has references, they really have a charge of energy connected with them. And here's another point I would make about this. Yeah. There's no other book anything like this in that respect. It gives a vast, vast context of art and culture and civilization. And I know he probably didn't do it during his education, since he only went to school up to 6th grade. Unless they had one hell of an educational system in Victoria. He's an autodidact. He learned it himself. He was grew up on a farm, so he was obviously an extraordinary soul, obviously. And he had no money too. He grew up he came of age in the Depression, so there are no jobs, and he had his farm, his dad's farm went out of business. So he would go to the bookstore and take books, and if he didn't like them, he would return them. So he was, and he couldn't afford to go to concerts, but he discovered that at the end of the first movement, at the back door, you could go in. So I think he's an expert on classical music after the first movement. So it's just astonishing all that he knows about, I mean, the Arabic world, the Persian world, Indian culture, Chinese culture, Western Greek culture. It's quite astonishing. I mean, an incredible man, obviously. So he'll drop things in all the time, and when he drops Emperor Yu on you, you might not know of that. But what you can do is you can whip open your new edition of Stay with God to the glossary, and there you will find you. In fact, that was one of the big things in it. It's quite extensive. It's like 30 pages or so. And every reference that I could find, there might be one or two I couldn't find, are in here, just a little thumbnail. And if you're interested in it, I really do, it's worth it, because there's great power in the references he's making, if you know what he's talking about. It's not just showing off learning. It's nothing like that at all. Another thing to say about that is you've seen this morning that he could be rather acid in his tone. Wouldn't you agree with that after A Dream of Wet Pavements? He could be critical. Well, he's very much that way in talking about the history of world civilization. He'll take some of the greatest figures in history and just tear them to pieces, right? I mentioned yesterday that Beethoven gets a real spanking, as does Shakespeare, as does Michelangelo, as does Dante, like the greatest artists of the Western world. So some people take offense to this and, say, hey, I don't buy this. You don't have to accept his opinions on anything. That's not the point. But when he does say these things, he really has a point to make that's worth noting, For example, he'll really take Dante to task for having pretended to know beyond what he knew. Like he put Muhammad down in hell, suffering the tortures of hell. Well, it's hard to believe that he actually saw that. So he was pretending to be a prophet when he wasn't, for example. Or, a lot of things like this. And Francis obviously clearly knows that Dante is one of the greatest poets who ever lived. There's no doubt about that. But so you're one of the supreme geniuses of the whole world. So what? We're talking, this is the court of the Avatar. You're just sort of a lowly genius in that setting. But that's true. That's what really matters. We're in the most important things, and you may be the greatest writer of English, Shakespeare, the greatest dramatist who ever lived. So what? So what? That doesn't count here. So he's really set I think, the truthful perspective on the whole thing. But he'll make points that really have a deep insight in them. So I just suggest that for people who get irked by, opinions that they don't agree with. But many people wouldn't agree with. So here are some, here's a little bit about when he presented it to Baba. I found a lot of this at Avatar's Abode. Okay, down here. In the letter which he wrote, he had just traveled to India, joined Baba as one of the resident Mandali. He had no idea that he was going to stay for 10 years. He thought he might be sent back after a month or two. He wound up staying for the rest of Baba's life. In a letter which he wrote back to his close associates in Australia, probably in late February 1959, Francis gave his own description of the experience of orally rendering the poem to Baba and the reception that it received. So this was a personal letter. The miracle which I hoped for and yet dared not hope for when I was writing Stay with God apparently occurred. It is apparently a proper job. Sounds very British, doesn't it? Baba says it is second only to God Speaks, and even gives God Speaks life, and that it is unique inasmuch as never before during any of his incarnations has such a book been written. And he says, if this is what I, God, feel, what must posterity think, and how it will be moved when it reads it? And he has said, I'm not just humoring you, Francis, it is a fact. Although I cannot believe all this, I cannot disbelieve it. And the morning reading sessions bear out that he means it. They are almost like the Qawwali sessions I have described to you, which took place at Meherabad in 1955 during that 4-week Sahaba Sen. Baba has passages repeated again and again whilst gesturing approval and elucidation to the Mandali audience. And here's some more of what Baba said. Although the women Mandali did not participate in these divine wine of poetry drinking bouts with the men in Mandali Hall, apparently some of the exuberant mood from the sessions carried over when Baba returned each day for his time on the women's side, Meherzad, as Baba's own Mera related in a letter to an American correspondent. This is Mera. Baba says this book is a masterpiece, she wrote. It is so beautifully written. To quote Baba, she went on, Mera, he who reads this book will have read everything. Indeed, we have never before seen Baba so enthusiastic. Baba's response was further dilated upon by his sister Mani in a family letter that she sent out to Baba's Western followers at that time. Baba, and this is quoting from her, said that the unique fact of this epic of the living avatar being written during his lifetime and being heard by him in physical form will have a great bearing and significance for posterity. Among the things he said in praise of it was, my love will touch the heart of all who read it as no book has ever done. The book contains food for the brain and a feast for the heart, Baba said later in an interview with one of his Indian lovers. The powerful integration of concentrated, sublime thinking and intense feeling seems to have been a characteristic of the poem Baba especially liked. He's intellectually brilliant, but it's very passionate also. You know, it's not dry, crusty British writing. Baba didn't like dry writing. He liked wet writing. As Francis himself conveyed in another of his letters to his friends in Australia, I think the highest praise that Baba gave Stay with God was, it will appeal both to the highest intellects and to those with simple hearts. So this introduction gives a lot more on the writing of it and what Baba said and that kind of thing. And here's the very opening. And let's see if we can take a stab at what do you think the poetic form is? Got a name for this kind of a poem? If you count the number of lines. 14. Can you think of a famous Western poetic form that has 14 lines? Sonnet, that's right. This is actually, we read a Shakespearean sonnet, but this is what's called an Italian sonnet. Those are the two forms. And the rhyme scheme is, okay, friend, book, took, end, send, look, forsook, mend. So A-B-B-A, A-B-B-A. And then we have a sestet, a 6-line conclusion. Okay, amend. Story, tell, labor, savor, well, glory. That would be CDEEDC. That's the Italian sonnet form. And so he opened it with a sonnet, which I'll read. To Meher Baba, my Lord and friend of the worlds, here is the book on the theme you set me, right? He gave him the title, Stay with God, and which I took into my heart and pondered to the end, that your dear name be known to men, and send perhaps one to your feet. Look indulgently on it, or else forsook am I. And yet, Lord, correct my wit and mend my heart in love, for love is my story. And in this book have I labored to tell something of your most marvelous labor. When of myself I wrote, naught of your savor was in it, but when I wrote of love, I wrote well, even showing forth some fraction of your glory. So that's, he calls it the dedicatory. This is how it starts. The whole thing starts. And let me show you how the poem ends. There's a coda here. And the stanzas, this is book 5, coda to book 5. And all the stanzas there have 14 lines. So he concludes it with a stanza that is another sonnet, and it clearly echoes the first. So have I writ what love told me to write, right? Baba told him to write, Stay with God. And every line betrays my poverty of love. As a poor man asked his charity, displays but a single shilling to our sight. Yet I'm somewhat contented with my plight, because rich love stooped down to ask of me, thus honoring me in whom no others see worth, myself the least. Thus does love with light and gentle grace encourage on his way the least of us, taking each by the hand he's labored with, using the same labor to raise him to still greater favor, perhaps, even perhaps, to love's own path, to stand in light when silence speaks its shining day. So he began it and ended the whole thing with an Italian sonnet, this being one index of the extraordinary detailed attention that he gave to all sorts of formal structures in it. It's quite remarkable in that way. In fact, let me show you, this is the only book I've ever read where I would say the table of contents is an important element. It really is, which is this. These are the 5 books. So, the theme of this whole weekend has been praise, right? Well, this is a magnificent epic of praise to Baba the God-man, I would say. It was just the year before Baba gave him the order to write this. 1955 November was when Baba gave the order. And it was just 1955. 1954, Baba declared his avatarhood. So a large part of what Francis is doing is declaring and poetically expressing who and what the avatar is. So there are 5 books, and each of them is doing something quite different from each other. So Meher Baba, The Occurrence of Reality in Illusion. What this is a narrative. It's a biography of Baba from his birth up to 1955, right? That's when Baba gave him the order. So that's the end point here. So it's so it's the occurrence of reality, that is the reality of God, occurring in illusion as the avatar a man among, in humanity, living a human life. Then this is the love song of John Kerry. And Francis uses this name, John Kerry, as a name for himself, but it enables him to speak in a personal voice and at the same time have a distance from this John Kerry. But now this is a love song then. This is expressing Baba as the beloved, right? First was his life story, but now it's showing him as the beloved from the perspective of a lover, showing him in that dynamic, lover. So illusion singing to reality. See, current's an illusion, now illusion is singing to reality. The third book, God Speaking, have you ever heard of a book that seems to remind you of? You might have. If you take a dip into that room there and look really hard, you might find something. Well, God Speaks was published in November of 1955, the very month of the Sahavas. And the book came then. That's probably when Francis got his first copy. And this is the most personal aspect of Baba that is the focus, the divine beloved, the human whom I love, whom I adore. He's expressing that. This is completely impersonal, right? It's about the divine theme. Do you know what the divine theme is? Anyone give a shot at explaining what the divine theme is? Yeah. The journey of the soul. From where to where? From creation out of God to God realization, yeah. It's the whole. Meher Baba was the first man I've ever heard of to explain this. I don't think it's ever been explained before. So, creation, evolution of form and consciousness, reincarnation in human form, the involution from gross consciousness to the subtle and mental sphere to God realization. That story, the biography, this was the biography of Meher Baba. This is the biography of the soul. So it's not a personal Meher Baba at all. It's got Meher Baba through all of creation. He's showing that, right? So he's showing Baba, that's about Baba too, because it's Baba who does it. You see how he's looking at Baba from these different angles, right? Do you see that? Human life, the divine beloved, now manifesting through all of creation through soul's journey. Then the steps to his feet, this is kind of explaining who Baba is. And the rest is how we get to him. So the steps to his feet is about how, sort of tough love advice on how you actually get to the feet of the perfect master there. And then the last one is half of the book, pages 1 to 73 to there, 73 to 134. So it's quite long. It's God-man as world access and living perfection of art. So do you know the word kutub, the kutub? What does a kutub mean? Huh? It's the perfect master. And literally, do you know, from your, third grade classes in Arabic, happen to remember kutub? It's the axis or the pole around which everything revolves. It's the axis, yeah. So that was a concept that some of the great Sufis, they talked about the kutub as the human being who is the axis of the entire universe. They came up with an idea approaching perfect master and avatar. So world axis is links to that. Kutub. God-man is world access and living perfection of art. So the God-man is the perfection of art. Art is the expression and manifestation of God within illusion. That's what art is. So the avatar himself is the highest art. The divine sun of reality shining through the mists of illusion. So you can see the subtitles are all linked. The occurrence of reality and illusion, illusion singing to reality. The question which reality asked itself. Which question was that, by the way? Who am I? Right. And the beginning of illusion and its end. Because the moment God asked, who am I, illusion started. And it comes to an end when you realize God. And then abandoning illusion for reality. How you get out of this. How you find... It's about the perfect master, actually. And then the divine sun of reality shining through the mists of illusion. The manifestation of the reality through art. And he means art in this very elevated sense. So that's the structure of the whole book. It's a very profound and powerful concept of how he's explored his topic. Here is another little feature of it. Let me see. Yeah. Here's just on the formal characteristics. So these are the 5 books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And book 1 is that biography of Baba from, his birth through 1955. And it's divided into 7 sections, actually. They're formal little divider lines marking them. And all of the stanzas have 7 lines, 7-line stanzas. And in the sections, there are 7 stanzas in the first, 14 in the second, 101 in the third, 16 and 16 in the fourth and fifth, 24 in the sixth, and 7 in the fifth. Okay, I've spent a lot of time with this, but this is really thought out, the symmetries and proportions of all of this, the 7 parts. Book 2, the stanzas are 6 lines each, not 7. And I'm thinking of 6. This is about the lover singing to the beloved. So the perspective is one of incompleteness, right? I'm the lover and I'm incomplete, and I want you, the beloved, to complete me. I want to unite with you. So 6 wants to become 7, right? So that's what I think. There are 24 stanzas. Notice section 6 had 24 stanzas. And in section 6 of the biography, it brings up John Carey. John Carey is the name that Francis gives for himself. And this is the love song of John Carey. So you see, there are all these little details that he's thought out. Book 3, this is his account of the divine theme, a poetic narrative of it. And it's very, very beautiful. And it's divided into 4 sections plus a coda. Do you know what a coda is? A coda? It's a musical term. So like in a movement by, say, Mozart, or a composition of Bach, let's say, you come to the end of the movement and it's essentially complete. But they introduce a small phrase or small section that recapitulates some of the essential thematic material and ends it. That's what a coda is. It's a recapitulation of content and a conclusion of it. So Francis uses codas throughout Stay with God. He studied classical music. He was thinking of becoming a classical pianist at one point. So he knows musical form very well. So anyway, this book 3 on the divine theme, the journey of the soul, is essentially based on a musical form called theme and variation. at other sessions where we have more time, I have a piece of Mozart's. It's da 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 da. You've ever heard that one? Twinkle, twinkle, little star. So he has like, I don't know, 30 variations on it, and he does unbelievable things with that little theme. That's a basic classical form, where you have a theme and you vary it in different ways, right? Well, that's what Francis is using here. He has the divine theme, and he tells that story 4 times in very different ways. When Baba said that Stay with God gives life to God speaks, this is the part where that is most obviously true. So it's quite beautiful, really, poetically. And then there's a coda where one stanza he does another short repeat. And the stanzas are 10 lines each. Does the number 10 ring any bells where the divine theme? The 10 states of God. Francis doesn't mention it, but I think it's obvious that was his reason. The 10 states of God. So if you look at this, a total of 40 stanzas here, right? In this one, there are 40 stanzas, and in Book 5, each section has 40 stanzas. So there's real attention to this numerical side of things. Anyway, 40 stanzas plus 1 coda. Book 4 is one section, and it has 40 stanzas, and I'll read the first stanza to give you a little idea of it. So must be prepared the ground for the sowing, for the entering of the seed of light in one's earth. The seed of man is the gathered light of form. The seed of light is the grace of the perfect master. Okay, every stanza, every one of the 40 stanzas ends with the phrase, a perfect master. In view of which, the fact that there are 5 lines per stanza, does that ring a bell? 5 perfect masters, yeah. So there's that connection. 10 line stanzas, I think because of the 10 states of God, and 5 line stanzas, obviously, because it's all about the perfect master. And then the last book is divided into 4 big sections. And each section has 40 stanzas. So you see this number 40 repeating? 40 stanzas here, 40 stanzas here, 40 stanzas in each of the 4 parts, right? And each stanza has 14 lines. Notice it began with 7-line stanzas, and now there are 14-line stanzas. So the last stanza is an Italian sonnet, which is 14 lines also. So I'm just starting to show he really has given great attention to formal. I mean, you would never notice this. It's just when I was preparing this, to do this edition, I counted up everything and saw these patterns that are obviously intentional. If you've ever read Dante, the Divine Comedy, it's really structured this way. I'm going to mix it up now, but I think there are 33 cantos in Inferno, 33 in Purgatorio, and I think 34 in Paradiso, totaling 100. And there are all sorts of other formal symmetries throughout it. In the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, he does all kinds of stuff like this. There's a concept called the golden mean, and I forget exactly how you define it. But if you count the measures in a composition of his, the measure that corresponds to the golden mean has a special significance in the composition. I mean, I don't know how the guy was able to work these things out that well. So there is a lot in, some of the great, not every, but some of the great artists gave a lot of attention to formal things like this. And Francis did too, just so that you know. here's how the thing begins. Let's see. I'm going to go to a different one here. We have someone who has been recently to the place named here. So Todd can give us an exposition on the subject. Okay. Wings, this is the very opening of book one. And this book one is the biographical section, right? Wings towards the glaciers of Kailas, where the first forefathers nourished the seed of God. And Shiva gentled Ganga. And Parvati walked by streams of living heart. For Shiva was Jesus before him, and Parvati his loveliness on the earth, as was Rama, as was Krishna, as was Abraham and Zarathustra, and Buddha, Muhammad, and their loveliness, God's avatar, as is now Baba. Sing Baba, your descent this time on earth, your brightness in our night, your comfort in our separation. 7 lines, right? This is what is called a proem, P-R-O-E-M, in epics. Any of you ever read Homer, the Iliad or the Odyssey? Yeah. Everyone used to, but anyway, people don't anymore. But I'm glad you have. English major, yeah. So it begins, sing heavenly muse. I actually remember the Greek, Menin aedithea, paleio achilleus, ulomene. Menin, wrath, paleidi, menin aedithea. Menin, sing the wrath, O goddess, paleio achilleus, of Achilles, son of Peleus. Ulomenein, it goes on like that. So it's a formal declaration of the theme of the whole epic, in short. That's what he's doing here too. I'm bringing up Homer because he refers to Homer a lot in this, more than anyone other source here. So the glaciers of Kailash. I know there's one person here at least who knows what Kailash is. Todd was just there. Here is, I have some pictures. Let me see. Yeah, there's Mount Kailash. Did you go to the lake there, Manasarovar? That's the lake itself is, 17,000 feet or something. It's up there. So that's Mount Kailash. There. Quite an impressive place. People do circumambulate it, even now. It's about 40 miles around or something. You probably might acclimate for a couple days. I think you're up around 18,000 feet the whole time. Yeah. So there it is again. And Mount Kailash is a very central symbol in Stay With God. And he mentioned in that opening, here's maps of where it is. I think I skipped over them, yeah. Okay, yeah, you see right here, Mount Kailash. There's Nepal, there's China. There's Todd coming into it from China. Right on the border between China and India. So Mount Everest would be farther down this way. And Nepal, Mount Kailash up there, Bhutan there. So it's 21,000 feet, 22,000 feet, something like that. Yeah. And here is the reason that he's mentioning it. Let me bring up the proem once again. wings towards the glaciers of Kailash, where Shiva gentled Ganga and Parvati walked by streams of living heart. Now Ganga, do you know what Ganga is? The Ganges River. And the Ganges River, I don't think it begins precisely there. I don't remember, but it begins from the Himalayas, not too far from there. And you know who Shiva is? Did you happen to meet Shiva while you were there, Todd?
Not in form. The entity. See, that's basically representation of God the Father.
Yeah. The Shiva is one of the huge streams of Hinduism is devotion to Shiva. Another huge stream is devotion to Vishnu. And it's out of Vaishnavism that we get the idea of the avatar, was incarnation of Vishnu. But I would say worship of Shiva is this, massive and pervasive in India as that is. He's also been schematized into the trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. That would be creator, preserver, destroyer. That's an important idea also. But he's not just the destroyer. He's like, as you say, God the Father. And his consort is Parvati. There are all these stories about her. So they're a divine couple. And they live up on the top of Mount Kailash. But you're not supposed to go up there. So I don't suppose you went up there, Todd, did you? No. Yeah. So he's using this as the axis mundi, that is the axis of the entire universe. Throughout all of Stay With God, he keeps recurring to this as a symbol, which is also God-man is world axis, right? The kutub and the avatar is the axis of the entire universe. So here's a mountain which symbolizes that too. And on top of it, you get Shiva, Parvati, Baba Mera, those two aspects of things. That he develops that too. You were reading about the sun and the moon, right? When you read about that. That's the same idea. Those two aspects of divinity. It's actually right here, as a matter of fact. Shiva gentled Ganga. Now this illustrates why, there's really a charge to be gained in knowing what Francis is talking about. Any of you happen to know Shiva and Ganga, the story there? Well, if you were Hindu, you very likely might. Yeah, the dreadlocks of Shiva. There he is. This is the story. I'm forgetting the details myself, but they offended a rishi somehow. I've forgotten exactly how right now. And I think the ancestors were condemned to 10,000 years of hell. There's something like that. I have to reread the story. And the only way to redeem them was for the king, their descendant, to get the forgiveness of God to descend to earth. And the only way to do that would be to have the Ganges, Ganga River, which was a heavenly river. It wasn't down on the earth at all, up in heaven. Bring it down to earth to clean it of its sin. But the river Ganga, she was kind of, persnippety. Wasn't just going to. So if she was going to do it, she was just going to come crashing down. And that would have destroyed the earth, right? So Shiva, appealed to by this king, had the river fall in his dreadlocks. You see there? So the fall was broken, and thus the Ganges became a blessing to the world instead of a destruction. So Francis uses this as another symbol of the avatar, where the grace of God is mediated through the avatar and becomes a blessing to the world, right? You see all the symbols he's compacted into this one thing. So when he says, Shiva gentled Ganga, that is, the Ganges River was going to come crashing down because she didn't give a damn. If it was going to come down, she was just going to come down. But Shiva made it happen in a gentle and merciful way that became a blessing to the world. It's This is Shiva and Parvati. So all this stuff is, right there in the very first stanza. These are themes that are developed throughout the entire poem, actually. Shiva gentled Ganga, and Parvati walked by streams of living heart. Now that the Ganges River has been made into a nice river, she can, Mera used to like gardens, and streams of the heart would be the sort of thing that she would go for. So Parvati likes it too. Parvati and Shiva, there are many, many stories in the Hindu culture about them. Parvati has a whole history of her own. For Shiva was Jesus before him. Francis uses Shiva as a designation for the primordial avatar. Where he got that from, I don't quite know. But he uses that as like the very first avatar. So this is the primordial avatar who was Jesus before Jesus actually got incarnated as a human being, right? Shiva was Jesus before him, and Parvati his loveliness in the earth. So we get this dichotomy, Shiva, Parvati, the Jalali, fire of God and the loveliness of God being manifested, that duality there. As was Rama, as was Krishna, as was Abraham, Francis treats Abraham as an avatar. I did hear Erich talk about this, and Erich said Abraham was an avatar. I've never heard anything like that. Francis must have had some kind of tradition he was accessing, and I wasn't able to figure out what that was. Yeah. Baba did, confirm Shaivism, as a matter of fact. He went to, there are stories about that. But no, I've wondered about that too. And Buddha and Muhammad in their loveliness, God's avatar, as is now Baba. So he set Baba in his lineage of the 7 avatars, or 8 if you flip Abraham in there. This too is going to keep repeating throughout Stay with God. He'll go through these 7 and talk about them in their, what came out of them. Big themes. When you get to book 5, anyway, you'll see it everywhere. Those of you who are reading it, which I'm glad you are. Sing, Baba, your descent this time on earth, your brightness in our night, your comfort in our separation. So this is like Homer invoking the muse. Maiden aede thea, wrath, sing, O goddess, play adio Achilles of Achilles. Sing the wrath of Achilles, son of Peleus. You sing, you muse sing, because I know nothing and cannot, I don't have anything to say. You have to sing through me. Well, Francis expresses that theme repeatedly throughout the first book. If you read closely, you'll notice it. He'll say, sing, because I know nothing. So this is classic epic proem. Yeah.
Did Baba say that Ganesh was a representation of the first avatar, or also the first soul realizing God, so Baba?
I know that's in the Nothing and the Everything by Bao. Whether Baba said that or not, I don't know. Francis makes no mention of Ganesh here. So I don't know. Ganesh, he's one of the hit gods in India. He's a real popular. Ganesh's days are some of the biggest. And when you live in India, you know it, because when there's a big day, you can't go anywhere.
Especially Maharashtra.
Maharashtra is a big place for it. So this poem really continues throughout all of this. For it is my love's desiring, Baba, to compose a book on this theme which you set me. You told me to write Stay with God, right? And to this task my spirit spreads its wings, only to fall stifled and overcome, the song groaning within my breast, impossible of utterance. For only a perfect master can write a book, And saintship is the least qualification to sing of you, although a profound scholarship is sufficient for assembling of mere facts. But I have neither devotion nor learning for the task. This is the inadequacy theme. It's like, I'm not qualified to do this. You need a perfect master, or if you want a beginner, you have to get a saint. But I'm none of those things. In the past, you had Vyasa and Homer and Valmiki. Okay, you know who Homer is, right? The great Greek epic poet. Lived maybe 725 BC, something like that. The author of the Odyssey and the Iliad. And he was overwhelmingly the most important figure in ancient Greece. Even in the 5th century, they all revered Homer. Do you know who Vyasa and Valmiki are by any chance? Huh. Yeah. Yeah. The Ramayana is by him. And how about Vyasa? Do you know? He's the author of so many things that he couldn't possibly be the author of all of them. It's like everything was written by him. But among those, one of them is the Mahabharata. Do you know the Mahabharata? It's the great epic. There are two great epics in ancient India, the Ramayana, which is the story of Ram, and the Mahabharata is a great epic of the war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, two branches of a family, into which conflict Krishna appears and plays a central role. So a lot of the stories about Krishna come from the Mahabharata. The Bhagavad Gita is actually a part of the Mahabharata. So he's referring to the two greatest epics of India there. You had Vyasa and Homer and many others who were your name and yourself. In other words, you were them. They were God realized, he's saying. To leave your name in impassioned imprisonment of words. Isn't that a nice way of putting it? The story of the Avatar in impassioned imprisonment. You imprisoned them, put them in stone, you captured them in words, in these great stories. And saints innumerable, who picked up the threads of your name's loveliness and wove them into bright patterned verses. Only if you, Baba, sustain my flight, give knowledge to my intellect, and unbind the empathy of this my heart, can this work be done. Not miracle, but faith. Faith that is grace, and grace your miracle. So this is his appeal to his muse, which is Baba. So this is the opening. It's quite a magnificent opening. It's in the great epic tradition. So in this case, I mean, you might be scared off reading this the first time, where you have, wings towards the glaciers of Kailas, where the first fathers nourished the seed of God, and Shiva Janta Ganga. Ah! But, you don't really need to know that much. I mean, I think I just covered some of the bases to sort of get what he's driving at. Shiva, Parvati, Baba Mera, it's not that hard to understand. And gentling Ganga, well, the dreadlocks of Shiva receiving the waters of the Ganges River. It's not that difficult to know enough to see what he's talking about and get the force of it. And yet he brings it right into Baba's story. That's a lot of what he's doing, over and over again. Here's another reference to the Mount Kailash. Let's see. Book 5 is going to be, is this it? Yeah. Now this one, let's see. Yeah, Aaron, you just bought this book, right? The Holy Mountain? Yeah, so this is another part of the Kailash connection. You see, Francis develops these themes in all these ways. And one of them was this, Mount Kailash, right? That big, where Shiva and Parvati, you saw the pictures of the mountain. Well, He's there was a book published in the 1930s in English. Yeah, do you want to whip it out and show it? This is the holy mountain. In fact, Sonio, do you want to brandish the treasure here? You see right there? Okay, yeah. No, this is a real treasure. A Stay with God with Baba's own signature. Baba signed the book, actually. So this is one of those. Yeah, you say that Francis's signature is in a slip of paper. He wouldn't sign the book himself. If Baba had signed it, he wouldn't. Yeah. No, that's a real treasure you got there. So as she does this, so he draws all these connections with Mount Kailash. I'll be giving you another in a minute. But one of them was this man, Hamsa. He became called Hamsa, who's from Maharashtra, by the way. And he was an ardent devotee of Lord Dattatreya. Do you know Dattatreya? You know Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, the three-headed God? Dattatreya is one of the names given to that trinity, Brahma, creator, preserver, destroyer. Narayan Maharaj, you know Narayan Maharaj, one of Baba's masters, was actually a devotee of Lord Dattatreya. And Hamsa he was a Brahmin, his parents, I think, envisioned another career for him than this one I'm going to describe. But he just adored Lord Dattatreya. And he wanted to have the physical darshan of Lord Dattatreya. You know, Lord Dattatreya is like, I don't know, Zeus or somebody like that. It's not like person you go and meet. But he wanted the physical darshan of Lord Dattatreya, and his concept was that Lord Dattatreya was up on Mount Kailash. So he traveled there, and it was one hell of a trip. I mean, in those days, I think even would be a little tougher than what Todd went through. He almost got killed many times. And he finally got there, that lake that I showed you. By the way, Francis often refers to the swans of Manasarawar. You're getting a lot here. The lake is called Lake Manasarawar at the feet of Mount Kailash, Lake Manasarawar. And the legend is that the swans fly over the lake and see their own reflection in the lake. And that is taken by Francis as a symbol for the soul on the sixth plane of consciousness, where you see in the mirror your own reflection. You see your own self there. That's another of the things. So Hamsa, are you getting all of this? Yeah. Hamsa means swan. That's literally what it means. That's the name he adopted. So he got up to Lake Manasarawar, and I don't know, you've read this, Aaron. You read? They tried to practically killed him, yeah.
Fasting like crazy, and people always worried it was a path, but at the lake it was very peaceful though.
Yeah.
It was a nice rest, and there was like huts.
Yeah.
He went in a hut by himself for days.
Yeah.
He didn't eat anything.
Yeah.
Very spiritually charged.
And from there he wanted to go up to this little tarn high up on the mountain where he was going to meditate until he had the personal darshan of Lord Dattatreya. And this is like, we're talking 17,000 feet at Lake Manasarawar. This is like up on the mountainside, freezing, ice and snow, and he practically died going up there. And then he sat down in meditation and began to closed his eyes, and it was freezing cold. The snow was building up to his, piling up, and several days. And there's much more to this. It's like a very developed story. And finally, he heard a voice calling him. I can't remember it in exact detail. And but he won't open his eyes. He wouldn't be satisfied with anything less than seeing Lord Dattatreya. And finally, his eyes opened by themselves, and there was Lord Dattatreya. And the way it's described, the language of its description, you have it there?
I have a Sanskrit poem that relates to it when he finally saw Dattatreya.
Yeah.
An old Sanskrit poem. The master preaches through his silence, and all the doubts of the disciple are solved.
Yes, yes. And the way he characterizes the experience he had, if it's true, it's God realization. So, I mean, I don't know, but it very well could be. And Francis treats him throughout this as someone who achieved God realization throughout this. So, you see, here's another weave in this Kailash thing. I'm just bringing up this one thing of Kailash to give an idea of what you get in Stay with God. We've had Shiva Parvati in the stream. We've had the Axis Mundi, all this sort of thing. Here is someone, a actual person in the 20th century who went there and had such an experience. It's the living experience of God, which he had at this spot on Mount Kailash.
Like on the way up, he stumbled upon a cave, and there was another very advanced soul.
Yes.
That was a whole conversation. It was very interesting.
Yeah, you have this book. I just saw this book, The Holy Mountain it's called, in the notes of Stay with God, and I thought, it's probably some good scholarly book about Mount Kailash. Nothing of the kind. It's a magnificent... What touched me so much was the simplicity of this guy. He was educated and wealthy kid, but he just had this... He had to have Lord Dattatreya's darshan, and he would die first if he couldn't get it. And so Lord Dattatreya picked him up in his arms like a baby, and it's very, very touching. Well, here's the reason for mentioning all of this. That Francis, without ever saying what he's doing, relates the climax of the story. The sun was setting over Sri Kailash. I bowed to the four directions, spread my tiger skin on the ice, planted my staff on the right, and cried, "Victory to the Lord, my master," and sat in the Siddhasana. Any of you do that? The Siddhasana? I think it's the yogic, yeah. You're doing the Siddhasana? This maybe after February, might be a little easier.
It's like this.
Yeah. Right.
It's really cool.
Yeah. so, so he sat sort of like Adrian in the Siddhasana, facing north, fixing his glorious image between my eyes. So he's imagining Dattatreya. Remember Dattatreya, the three-headed god, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. Cruel winds, bitter cold, snow up to my chest, but unbounded love defeated these enemies. On the third day, the Lord Dattatreya in his physical form came to me, picked me up as a child, and caressed me. Manas merged into Antakarana, Antakarana into Chitta, Chitta into Buddhi, into Ahamkara, all into the Satchitananda of the Supreme Self. Now, if that actually happened, he's describing God realization there. By the way, all those terms can be found in your nifty new glossary. So it's actually, he just pops this in there and you don't know what he's talking about. But if you know the whole story behind this, wow. So you see, this is another weave in the complex of Kailash. This is an actual, actually this was important in Francis's life. This is before he heard of Baba. In the 1930s, this was published. And here he saw something from his own period. This would be just 30 years before he read it, 25 years. Someone experiencing the kind of experiences you read about in the great, medieval saints and masters. Someone contemporary who's gone through this. That was quite important to him in his spiritual search before he found Baba. So this is another weave in this whole complex. Here's something else. You see, we can't possibly cover Stay with God in one session. I'm just going to give you a little idea of the sort of thing that is there. Here's another one. Where is this the one? And where is it? Yeah, I'm going to find it. Here we go. Is this it? No. Oh shucks, I'm not finding it immediately. Anyway, I'll just pop this up there because this is another big theme he talks about his cathedral. By the way, he talks about cathedrals as another example of that axis mundi, but he also talks about the Ellora Caves. Have any of you been to the Ellora Caves? A lot of you have. And it has a whole bunch of cave temples. And the most developed is the Kailash temple. And it is said that the profile of the Kailash temple matches the profile of the mountain, actually. And that temple is devoted to Shiva, right? We've been seeing Shiva coming up throughout this. And I remember Erich taking us. Boy, he was the greatest tour guide of all time, man, I'll tell you. The way he explained. And Baba went there many, many times. And Francis takes Kailash temple as the very symbol of what art should be. This is the real art. It wasn't constructed by, gathering stones and bringing them in and creating it. No, they dug it from the top down and revealed the whole thing. So they hollowed out, and everything had to be revealed as they dug out the stone from the top. Can you imagine doing that? And it's big, it's huge. I think it took centuries to do this. So to Francis, this is the very model case of what art should really be. Okay, I'll go on to something else. There are many other things in this whole Kailash weave we could talk about. He has a whole thing about the Kailash temple versus Picasso's painting Guernica, which you may know, one of the most famous things. He has a lot to say about this is the real art, and this Picasso's a work of genius is what happens when you're alienated from God and you just see the horror of things, It's horrible what's happening. Well, the real thing is to fight the enemy within yourself. And that's what you see in the Kailash temple about Shiva, where you're waging war against yourself. You're not protesting about what other people do. It's part of a whole massive explanation of what art should be that comes up in this fifth book. Okay. Let's see. Let's do some of the love song. I would love to spend more time on these things. I tell you, you can really go into this. It repays the effort to go into state. So you guys reading it, you're in for a treat. No, it's, here, I'll show you. Oops. A little bit of it. No, it's the references in Stay with God. Francis himself, yeah, here it is, compiled these notes, which are right here, like that. And he did so because Baba asked him to. I wouldn't have thought Baba would usually ask somebody to do notes, but you so obviously need it for Stay with God. It's just, and these notes are just really wonderful. So thus you see, Kailash is a mountain in the Himalayas and the mythological seat of Shiva. For a description of this mountain and something of its significance, see The Holy Mountain by Bhagwan Sri Hamsa, etc., etc. Well, I read this and I thought, oh, it's a nice scholarly book. It is not. It is nothing of the kind. It is a heart-rending story of a lover of God, actually. So these notes give a lot, actually. But it seemed obvious to me, it's just undeniable, that there's a lot, much, much more. So this glossary, here's just an example of, Abdul, it's as big as I can make it, unfortunately. Jalani, who this is, Abraham, Abu Bakr. Do you know Abu Bakr? He was one of the disciples of Muhammad, the first caliph. Abdul Fadl, Abu Sa'id. He was a very great Sufi master, probably a perfect master. The Achaeans. It was the Achaeans against the Trojans in the Iliad. Achilles the abbot. He was one of the desert fathers. Adam, Adi Buddha. What does it mean when you say Adi Buddha and not just Buddha? Adi Kairani, you've heard of him. Baba's secretary. Advaita, have you heard the word Advaita? It means non-dualism. Advaita Vedanta is the great school of Vedanta. Aeolus, he's a god who gave Odysseus a bag containing all the winds so that they get home. But Odysseus fell asleep, and his men said, they gave him all this treasure in the winds and not to us. Let's open the bag and see what's in it. All the winds came out, and they were blown back to, where they started, and they all wound up dying. Aeschylus, do you know Aeschylus? He's one of the greatest playwrights who ever lived. The three great playwrights of ancient Greece were Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. And these are, right after Shakespeare, I would put these as the three greatest playwrights of the whole Western world. Agamemnon. It's like things like this. They get referred to throughout Stay with God, and, most people are not going to know who they are. So if you're inclined, this is extensive. It's a lot of it. It's just little thumbnails so you can find out the basics of it. I'd just love to go in some of these things, but we better move on. So here is the love song, the love song of John Kerry, which is this. I'm having a hard time seeing where we are. Wings Toward the Glaciers. No, it's not this one. No. Sorry, I have to open up the slideshow I need here. Okay, so actually, at the end, I can't quite see what I'm dealing with. Okay, I'll just start in right here. No, it's not this one. Darn. Yeah, here we go. As we saw earlier, book one is the biography of Meher Baba up through 1955, when Baba gave Francis the order to write Stay with God. And Baba told him and Don to write about what you've experienced here. Well, in the first book of Stay with God, it's divided into 7 sections. The last is a kind of a coda. But the 6th section is a long account of the 55 Sahavas, where he repeats a lot of the discoursing that Baba gave at that time. I looked for the sources of it and I couldn't find it. Maybe he got somebody's notes. It's a great account of Baba's discoursing then. But in it, he describes who was there, the different people who were there, and he said there was one, John Carey, 49 years old from Australia, you know. Well, it's him, right? He's not even trying to hide it. But he's enabled to put a character who can give expression to the personal voice and from whom at the same time he can be detached and see as a third person. It's a poetic method. So here's a little bit of, here we have the personal voice coming in. Remember, the first one is the occurrence of reality within illusion. That was in the subtitle of the table of contents. That was the biography. Reality occurring, the life story. And now this is book 2, Illusion Singing to Reality. So John Carey is illusion. He represents illusion. And reality is Baba, right? So it's a love song. There's nothing else like this in the Baba literature to compare with it. So back in Australia, the most east of the West, John Carey continued the exile he had begun so many millions of years ago through his own act of waking up. What is that? Millions? He's millions of years old? What would that be? Huh? Yep. Yeah, the very beginning, when God said, "Who am I?" in him, and he originated. So he's giving that context to it and wanting to know exactly who he was. A musical question, which turned out to be a fugal proposition of infinite possible development. You may remember this morning we talked about the fugue. Remember that? See, if we had more time, I could play a little bit of a fugue, and you would get an idea of what it is. It's a particular musical form. The supreme master of the fugue was Bach. Sunbeat and rainbeat, veil upon veil, day veil of brightness, night veil of dark. You guys who are reading it have read about the sun and the moon, right? These are those two aspects. The sun aspect is the jalali, the fiery, the day, and the moon aspect is the jamali, the gentle and mysterious, the night. This is just one instance of that. Both are veils, he's hearing. In our experience, both are veils. Of gossamer spun, crowded close and thickly, sail veils and flag veil hosted over veil of sea. What the hell is he talking about? What kind of setting is he bringing to mind? Sails? Yep, sailing on the ocean, right? So that's like a metaphor for our life, or in our better selves, the journey to God. But it's like a journey across the ocean. He develops that a lot here. Boy, I wish we had time. I could show you some magnificent passages. But these sails, they're like a veil, right? They're made of cloth. And when you're sailing, you can't see through them, as a matter of fact. But it's also the veil of, I'm journeying, I'm living a life. When I'm not, I'm God. It's a veil over the reality of things. Everything is a veil. That's what he's saying here. Sail veils and flag veil. You flagged, raised a flag on top of my masthead. Hoisted over a veil of sea. The sea is a veil, right? Everything is a veil. Veil voyage and returning. Rain veil of weeping. Why is this called a rain veil? Well, rain is kind of like weeping, right? And when it's raining and you're at sea, you probably don't like it very much. So the weeping and happiness, and a place he hoped where none knew of ships and journeying, and the far shadowing spear of his glance, Baba, thou beloved. Okay, we're going to get the far shadowing spear. And this is a Homeric image. Like Achilles, he goes on a rampage and just kills people. And his spear casts this terrible shadow and just kills whoever he throws it, a far-shadowing spear. He's going to use Achilles and Ram as metaphors for Baba. And the link is that Ram used bow and arrow, and Achilles used a spear. Well, they're kind of similar. But now look at how he does this. Nursing his wound. This is John Kerry, right? John Kerry. Nursing his wound. Never healing, but widening, because the spearhead remained in it. Widening and love festering. What's happening to poor John Kerry? He's been stabbed by a spear, right? And this is like the spear of love, right? But it hurts like hell. But it's love festering. It's not festering with pus. It's festering with the love. Widening and love festering. Sloughing off veil flesh. You know what sloughing off means? Shedding. So he's shedding his flesh. So what would this mean? What's he? Yeah. His ego, his sanskaras, his false self. He's dropping it. It's dropping off, like my arm just fell off, or like a Gauss type, a Gauss type must. They take off their arms and so he's shedding parts of his body. It's an extraordinary figure of it. Sloughing off veil flesh, widening cleanly. So it's not all pussy and infected. No, this is a clean sloughing off. And the spearhead of bliss, right? It's the spearhead of bliss. Why? It came from Baba. Achilles Baba. Entering more deeply into the flesh veils, ever more hungrily and healingly. Why healingly, for God's sakes? Hungrily, the spearhead wants to kill me. Why is it healingly, for God's sakes? I'm getting freed. I'm being healed to discover my real self, right? As the sun into the earth where the farmer sets his plow, more deeply into the sour subsoil where no sun has been before. Remember, Francis was a farmer, so he knew whereof he spoke when he talks about this kind of thing. Each day of day drag or day flight, curtained within the three curtains of sleep veil and dream veil and awake veil. This is an important part of Baba's metaphysics. Sound sleep, dream, and wakefulness, This is right from Vedanta, by the way. But all three are veils, because they all curtain the reality, the I am God reality. Sleep the forgetter, and dream the distortioner, and wakefulness the cruel concretizer, who sets dreams in solid forms. Okay, these are the three states of our human experience. He's talking about our human life here. The painter, whose brush strokes are the bones, and whose color is the teeming flesh squeezed out of the tubes of nerves. What do you think about that as a metaphor? Squeezing out the paint through your nerves, and brush strokes being... remember, Francis was a painter. He had been a painter in this elite group of, artists back at that time. So he's using this. This is kind of an amazing metaphor. I've never seen anything.
I don't mean to get down to the gross level, but there's a colon right after nerves. Is that
No, that's intentional. He's going to keep it going. Because nursing the wound, in fact, up here he had nursing the wound, so he's bouncing back to that. If I wanted to be a schoolmarm, I could say, Francis, you are guilty of run-on sentences. And Francis would say, go to hell. He'd say it in Australian, though. Get out of here. He would, I bet you he could say it in spicy language. Nursing the wound, nursing the wound. Now look at this. Gazing with admiration on the face of the lovely spearman. He's getting killed, and he adores the spearman who's doing it to him. Isn't this one hell of a metaphor? Right. So this is talking about the agony of love for the beloved. Baba is the spearman. Here is Achilles, but he'll become Ram later on too. And now we start to get the John Kerry talking. We have direct discourse from him. He was saying to himself, small wonder and great wonder, things are as they are. And this business of everything and nothing. Now this is, I think, quite a poetic accomplishment. You've heard of the everything and the nothing, right? And if you pull out God Speaks and start in on chapter 8, you'll have like 10 pages talking about the nothing and the everything. And many people feel like jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge after a bit. I'm a little facetious. I myself groove on it. But it's challengingly metaphysical. Wouldn't you agree with that? A lot of it, the everything and the nothing. Well, here he turns it into a poetic metaphor in ways that I think you can really get. This business of being nothing and somebody, nobody feeling that he is something. He's saying, like, when I'm with you, Baba, I feel I'm nobody. I feel like but I'm somebody. I'm still there. So that he says, something in your hand, Baba, or else nothing before your feet. Make use of me or get rid of me. Don't leave me in this dilemma of, wanting to be nothing but still being there obnoxiously, right? So he's going to develop that throughout this whole love song. We won't have the time to go through it all. But I think this is quite a poetic accomplishment to turn the nothing and the everything into, I can relate to it myself. I always remember being in Mandali Hall with Erich, a whole full room full of people, and I always wanted to say something clever, or that would make a whoosh, or, that would sort of contribute. And I felt like such a goddamn idiot. I mean, when Erich the guy was so goddamn awesome, But I sort of want, I want to. Did you feel that way, Sam, ever? Being with Erich was something else again. If being with Erich was like that, what being with Baba must have been.
And if I did say something, I would feel pretty stupid.
Me too. The moment, and Erich would be so nice about it all, What a dunce. I should have kept my mouth shut. I think, and being with Baba, there must have been that feeling all the time of longing to be, I don't know, for something, but never able to quite do it. And yet, I don't know. I bet there was all these feelings. Anyway, he's expressing some of that. Patience, fool, he was telling himself. Now, here's one of the, we won't have the time to go through much more, but one of the things is he keeps telling himself, all right, John, don't complain, just shut up and put up with it. But then after 2 or 3 stanzas, he starts complaining again. And this cycle goes round and round and round, complaining and telling himself not to complain, and all these different angles and perspectives. So I'll read a little more. Yap of nothing about something which turns out to be nothing. All these things that we think are something all turn out to be nothing. Yap nout of piddle-pool puddling, instead of sitting quiet by the crystal stream gold-flecked of his love. Just shut up. Just enjoy his love. 2 advantages when you sit still. You don't feel the kick in the bones so much, and you give him a chance to do something. Baba, thou beloved. You, Baba. Here's another colon. He has colons at the end of half the stanzas. Stop wanting when you are lying down to raise yourself onto your knees, and stop wanting to lie down and cover your head with a blanket when you're standing up. You know, this experience is like whatever I'm doing, I don't feel satisfied with it and want to be doing something else. And this is just in the physical body. Stop wanting a job with dry land with lovely rivers. This is a theme that will come up too, saying stop wanting to be on dry land. Well, man, you're on a ship in mid-ocean. That's your predicament. Don't start wanting comfort and a nice home again. You're not going to get it. That metaphor of being on dry land versus a terrible sea voyage, that comes up in a lot of the ghazals. Turn in yourself, John. Bring back your eyes, fond man. So he's talking to himself, right? He's John. He's talking to himself. From restless visioning. What is it to you that an eye is furtive, a lip derisive, that speech is ruined, and no eyes lightning indites the pages of lovely verse? Okay, he's talking about the sort of thing we read about this morning. Don't worry about the state of this ignorant world. You know, forget about it, right? Become in your seeing blind, in your hearing deaf, or ever the lovely tide of spring will find you lip clinging to a clod of earth and your eyes stretched to an empty sky. Lip clinging means little, my little, whatever it is that I'm attached to. My house, you know what we're talking about. You're always attached to one thing or another, one stupid thing or another. Lip clinging means kissing and trying to hold on to it that way. Let me see. Okay, maybe that's all we can really do, but you get the idea of it? It's very, very moving. Here, let me read where he comes to glorious praise at the end of it. He does a lot of complaining. We haven't seen any of the complaining properly yet, but he gets to it. And then he immediately checks himself. But you are the great undoer, so that what shall be done shall be done. The remover who brings forward. You see, this is a paradox, right? By removing, you bring forward, actually. The stupefier who makes intelligent. You see the paradox of that? You stupefy me, and in that process of doing it, you make me intelligent. The wind that levels the young wheat, that the stalks may grow strong in the sun, while you, during the days of its growing, attend other else, and wet with your eyes the scythe of its reaping. Thou lovely one, thou faithless one of all faith, thou stone cutter and gem cutter, thou potter and breaker of pots, thou upturner and returner, thou upheavaler and leveler. You heave up and you level, both of those opposites, right? Thou bender of what is straight, thou straightener of the bent, thou Baba, thou lovely woman and glory man and child. There's been a lot of that in the love song of John Kerry. We didn't read it all. Thou moon night, thou star night, thou dawn swept of stars, thou morning of sun, thou alone doer, thou adorable and adored, thou us, thou only alone self. I mean, this is really glorious, actually. And this is the last stanza. Remember, we have 6-line stanzas, right? We talked about that earlier. Thus was John Kerry complaining and praising. For complaint is praise, inasmuch as complaint is attachment. And praise is complaint, because praise is separation. Somebody want to unpack that? Why is complaint praise? Yeah. You're attached to what you're complaining against. So you're praising it. If I'm complaining about it, I'm imputing to the one I'm complaining to the power to give me what I want. So it's a kind of praise. You are the possessor of the plenitude, and I want you to give it to me. So complaint is praise inasmuch as complaint is attachment. And praise is complaint because praise is separation. This was all separation. You are these glorious things. I praise you. But implicit is, I am separate from you. I see, but I am not. Right? So praise is complaint in that way. Great statement of this idea. I've never seen the idea stated in such a succinct way. And he was recognizing that this was the beginning of those subtractions, the sum total of which would be the subtraction of him from himself. What does he mean by that? Subtraction of him from himself? Yeah, his ego is gone, and his real self would remain, the self with a capital S. The false self is going to be annihilated. When the 5 sheaths are subtracted, Atman alone remains. If we had time, I would go over this. The 5 sheaths are in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. The model they give for the false self is made of 5 sheaths or circles around Atma at the center. You can find them in the glossary. The 5 sheaths are named in their Sanskrit names. Shivoham. Do you know what Shivoham means? Hum.
Exaltation of Shiva.
It is Shiva. And how about the hum part? I am. I am Shiva. Shivoham, Shivoham. This is a quotation from a very famous work by Adi Shankaracharya. We haven't mentioned him, have we? But he was the greatest philosopher of India. I think Baba even said the world's greatest philosopher, and was God-realized. The founding father of Advaita Vedanta. Baba actually said, I was Shankara, in fact. There's reason to believe he's a minor incarnation. Anyway, this is a quotation from a famous work of his. I am existence, knowledge, bliss. Do we have some Sanskrit scholars who can pop this off in Sanskrit? Sat Chit Anand. I am Sat Chit Anand. Yeah. Existence is Sat, knowledge Chit, Anand is bliss. Sat Chit Anand. So he's giving it in English. Cease, cease. Oops. Swallow thy breath every moment. This is a quote from Rumi, actually. So that's a little bit of the love song of John Kerry. So when you guys get there, I mean, a treat is in store. Again, there's nothing else like it in the Baba literature, you know. Francis was not a soupy, sloppy sentimentalist. So it's not like he was going to go gushing all the time. So coming from him, this is kind of an extraordinary thing. He would give this to Baba, but nobody else, I would say. And let's spend a few minutes, since we have can just look at little bits. I'm having trouble seeing where we are. No, it's not this one. As far as the glaciers of Kailash. I can't quite see what I'm dealing with. Front matter. Book 1. Yeah. Okay. I mentioned that the third book, there are 5 books to stay with God, right? And the second is the most personal of them. We just looked at it, the love song of John Kerry. And the fourth is the completely impersonal aspect of Baba, or God manifesting through the entirety of creation. And it's based on the divine theme, the journey of the soul from creation to God realization. That story he tells. And remember, God speaks had just been published. The first copies were available at the 55 Sahavas, where Baba gave Francis the order to write it. And Francis finished it by 1959. So he had just read God Speaks. So his command of it was, amazing. Now we've had study groups for decades to help us out. But this is telling that essential, the core of God Speaks is a story of the journey of the soul from creation to God realization. So this is a musical form. These, you see, there are formal breaks here. Well, there are 10 stanzas. We mentioned earlier the 10 states of God. And then he starts over and tells the story another time. He does it 4 times plus 1. There's a coda of 1 stanza. So the musical form here is theme and variation. There are many famous examples of theme and variation. You'll have a basic melodic theme, and then it gets repeated with all sorts of developments multiple times. It's a musical form. That's the form he used here. Again, if we had more time, I would play something of Mozart so you would see exactly what this form is. So he tells this story in a bunch of different ways. I'll read little bits, you get a sense of it. So, once God, that great being, whose nature is existence, knowledge, and bliss, right, Satchidanand, right, slept. Which state of God is this out of the 10? The first state of God. This is the beyond state of God. He was like a man in deep sleep who is, but does not know that he is. He had no knowledge of his knowledge, nor experience of his bliss. He was like a still, shoreless ocean, which no wind or wave moved upon. There was nothing but him. There were no stars, nor sun, nor earth, nor anything. All things were within him, but since he slept, they were also asleep, unformed and unmanifest. So, this is the first state of God, the beyond state. All knowledge of himself and of all things were in him, but he did not know that he knew. Then there surged within him the desire, whim, right? You know, the whim of God, right? To know who he was. And he spoke within himself the first speech, "Who am I?" And with the utterance of this first speech, all things in their potentiality came forth from him. But all things, by the way, Baba gave for Stay with God a message about the everything and the nothing. It's right in the front of the book. It's a very significant message. So Francis was using that, developing on that. And with the utterance of this first speech, all things, okay, it's the universe of stars and suns, etc. He goes then a little bit through the evolution of consciousness. And now, let me show you what he does with reincarnation. Here he is. As man, he loved his loves and suffered his loves. Sunbeat and rain hail, dew of love, whirlpool and dark wave and threatening rocks. Francis uses the figure of the dark wave to express the ocean of illusion that we're coming out of. The dark wave. We emerged from it. It's very exciting and thrilling and very dangerous also. A warm swirl of the surf's backrush round the ankles, and fine sands suspended like worlds in the water, right? There are whole universes in the water that we're swimming in all the time. And the moon come up huge and yellow. Warm honey of kisses, warm honey with slight salt. Okay, this is like romance or sexuality. Warm honey with slight salt. I mean, it's really quite a vivid thing, isn't it? You know, on the beach, in love and having romantic, relation, with this beautiful woman. And the pounding of earth shaker. Do you know who that would be? You probably wouldn't. That's Poseidon, the god of the ocean, who's kind of dangerous, right? Because we're mixing up with the ocean here, but it's all romantic, and there's a nice warm moon and waves washing back with sand. It's all very nice and romantic. Poseidon, and dream sleep, and the breeze in the dawn stirring a wisp of her lovely hair. Sounding pretty good, isn't it? So let's go to the next stanza. This is all reincarnation now. What's that? This is the moon aspect with romance and gentleness and mystery and beauty. Remember those two, the moon and the sun? Now we're going to get the day breaks, right? And this night of moon ended, and the honey eaten of her mouth. You've been kissing and eating the honey from her mouth in this wonderful romance we're enjoying. And the stars of her eyes fled back into the wells of the sky. She's not so pretty anymore. We've gotten sick of each other. The romance is over. And the sun come up again in clear sky or murk of another day. And the setting out on the wash of dark wave. Now the dark wave, you have to sail across it, and it is dangerous by God. Along hammered streets, lined with open mouths and protruding tongues of Kali. Do you know Kali? Here she is. Want to give her a nice kiss? Want to smooch her? She was pretty nice in the last stanza. And this is what she looks like now. You see all those skulls? You see? Right there. A garland of skulls around her neck. Huh? She had to do it. Do you get both halves of the story here, You don't get one half without the other half. Licking victims and votaries into blast furnaces. Remember what was happening about 10 years before this? The Nazi stuff? Yeah. Goose-stepping them. You know goose-stepping, right? Huh? We should do a demonstration. There's with big strides where you kick, soldiers. That's goose-stepping, yeah. To the rhythm of typewriter keys. So it's like combining imagery of an office with all this horrible stuff, right? So this is the other half. That's the problem with reincarnation. In the previous stanza, you had moon rising and, honey of kisses, and now you've got Kali and goose-stepping and blast furnaces. That's the problem of the human condition. And this is as far as most people get. But now, we'll just have to end here, but now he starts to talk about the turn inward and the entrance onto the spiritual path where he's a hero with unthinkably great and unimaginable feats of daring. And I'll read the last one. This is the powers which tempted Buddha. This is the fourth plane now. Now begins the game. This is the sixth plane now. Now begins the game of love in earnest, to which the flight of nights of earth, moon, and thundering wave on beach and stars and honeyed mouth and the delicate wisp of hair and sudden breeze. This is the imagery used before, right? Remember in the first half of the reincarnation. That was the anticipation of this, the real thing. Was apprenticeship to forgetfulness and service. This is the love which only the verses of God himself or his perfect saints can hint us towards. Deafness and sightlessness and the wasted frame and tears. God is man worshiping God as God, and God is God loving himself in a man. And so, till tears the final veil between him and himself and answers his question, who am I? With, I am myself. So this is the first pass through the divine theme. And he does it 4 times in very different ways each time. Okay, so this is some little tidbits from Stay with God. And with this, we'll have to close up. So thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. I hope you've gained something.